Welcome, everybody. In this video, we will perform the initial stages of EDA, exploratory data analysis, on a large data set of North Atlantic storm observations. And in the process, we'll gain some familiarity of working in R within Google Colab. So right now, you are looking at a document, a Jupyter notebook in Google Colab that is actually running on R. And so if you want to access these materials, the link is quite long, is up here, but I will post this link into the description of this video. And these materials, just to point out, they come from our course materials, which can be found over here. I will put this link as well in the description. And right now we are essentially working on the materials in the appendix with fundamentals of working with data. I've streamlined this a little bit, but if you want further reading, you can look through this document, and clicking on this link will open it in Google Colab. Okay, so the kind of first stage in exploratory data analysis would be just getting a sense, doing an inventory of what information we have in the data set, what information are we missing, what is the source of the data, how many observations are in the data, what are the variables in the data, do all the variables look like they're being stored appropriately. So that's what our focus is going to be on in this video. So the data set that we'll be working with, this is the storms data set, which is in the dplyr package. So this is often pronounced, this package is pronounced as dplyr. And so before we can access any of the data or scripts in the storms data set, we first need to load the library dplyr. So this package is installed in Colab, but in order to access these documents or the files and scripts in this package, we need to load this library every time we start a new session of R. So I'm going to run this code by hitting the play button over here, for example. And this is the first time I'm connecting to R, so it took a little bit longer, but that was the completion. And don't worry about this message that you're receiving. This is just, for example, telling us that there is a filter function in dplyr, but there was already a filter function defined in a package that was already loaded. So it has this conflict, and it's going to use the filter function in dplyr since we just loaded that package. But in any case, this is not an error. We see the check mark over here. So this line of code completed just fine. And so before we get deeper into this exercise, I want to just point out where you can go to get help documentation on any of the commands or data sets that we're using in this example, or in any case. So in R, there's a nice little convention for getting help by typing a question mark followed by the name of the data set or the name of the function that you want to get help on. So if we want to get help on the storms data set, which is what we're going to be exploring, I can type question mark storms and then run this code. And this code cell pops open a dialog box on the right side, a tab where we can learn about the data. So we can see where the data comes from, how many observations are in the data. We can see how many variables are in the data. There's 13 variables in total, and it lists all of the variables out. So these are all of the variables, and it gives you a little description about what each of those variables is measuring. So I will just say that not all help documentation in R is as thorough as this, but a lot of it is. So it can't hurt to check this out as a good first step to learn about your data. We can also get help on any other command or function in R by typing question mark and the name of that function. So we're going to use the type of function shortly. If you're curious about what that function does, here's the help manual for type of. And so here we can see that this is going to determine what type of data type an object is stored as. But this help window takes up a lot of space. So if we want to close that window down, or these tabs down, we can just close all of these tabs. And now we've got full access, full window to look at the Jupyter notebook. So one way to learn about our data is to go through the help manual. That was really useful. Perhaps the most useful command when we're working with data sets in R is the summary command. So the summary command is going to give me a numerical summary of all 13 variables in the data set storms. So storms is the name of the data set that we would like to summarize. So we just say summary storms, and we run this line of code. And really quickly, we get a numerical summary for all of the variables in this data set. And so we can see, we get some indication of how those variables are being stored. The name is being stored as character strings, year, month, day, hour, latitude, longitude. These are all being stored as some sort of numeric variable because I'm getting numeric summaries like median and mean for those variables. The status variable, I'm getting a different summary. Over here, we're getting counts. So we're getting a count of how many storms in the data set were tropical storms, how many were hurricanes, tropical depressions. So this status is clearly not a numeric variable. The categories are, descriptive strings of things, and we're counting up how many observations fall in each of those different categories. So this is actually a categorical variable. So we're going to want to store categorical variables differently than numeric variables. And you can look through the summary of all of these, and a couple of interesting things to point out is that we see that there are some NAs in some of these, for some of these variables, and others don't have any NAs. So an NA in R means missing value. And that missing value could be an issue with how the data was collected, how the data was recorded, or it could be just due to some inherent properties of the data. For example, in this case, what we can see is that not every storm had a category value. So categories are reserved just for hurricanes. So if you have a tropical storm, it does not have a category. It is being coded correctly within NA. But a bigger problem with this variable category, we'll focus on this, our attention here, is that category is being stored as a numeric variable. I can see I've got mean and median. However, I would like to treat category similar to the status. I would like to treat it as a categorical variable. How many storms were category 1? How many storms were category 2? And so on. So rather than get the mean and the median, I would like to get counts. And in order to do so, I'm going to store category. I'm going to convert the category variable from a numeric variable to a factor. So that's what we'll take a look at in the next video. But before I wrap up this video, I want to just point out a couple of other useful commands that we can enter to explore the data. I've summarized some of them here. If I want to insert a new code cell, I can say plus code, and we can take a look at what some of these do. So for example, head storms, that's the name of our data frame, is going to print out the first 6 rows of that data frame. So this also gives me some indication of what the data looks like, how the different variables are being stored, and so on. We can get a glimpse of the last 6 rows by, instead of doing head storms, we could do tail storms. And while I've got us here, we can also run the command str storms, which is like looking at the structure of the storms data set. And this is another way that we can summarize the data. We can see how many observations are in the data, how many variables there are, and what data type each of those variables would be. So I've summarized the data dictionary for the storms data. I've got a solutions to this, which I will also post the link in the comments below. But you can look through what I've written up about this data set. And again, this is an editable file. So if you double click on this cell, you can see both my answer and how I typed up that answer if you're curious about playing around with text cells in Colab. So we'll stop here for this video. I will make a second part of this video, which talks about how we can explore different data types in R and how we can convert some of the data types in the storms data set from one type to another. All right, thanks everybody.